G'day, I'm Callum and this will be a review of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm going to start by saying I haven't played the original Final Fantasy VII, or many other Final Fantasy games, so this is like an entry into the franchise after me playing 13, 13-2 and Lightning Returns on the PS3 ages ago. And they didn't really hook me to go, oh, I really want to play the rest of the franchise. I just know the running jokes about lots of Final Fantasy games, for the most part. And I played the demo, loved the demo, and so I played the main game. On PlayStation 4, of course, and I played it through on stream, so if you want to check out me playing it, you can check my Final Fantasy VII Remake playlist where I've got all the stream archives there. And also streaming on Twitch if you want to check me out on that side. The game consists of 18 chapters for the overall story. I just thought I'd mention that at the start because I mentioned about chapters 1 to 17 separate to 18 throughout my review here. And of course it's going to be spoiler free at the start. Then for the people who have finished the game, you will be able to listen to my thoughts, or the people that of course don't care about spoilers. Anyway, let's start with the genre and tone of the game, which has a great feel to it. I've always been interested in a world with a mix of magic and technology, and I think this delivers it splendidly. And I really love how the whole tone of it changes for each section of the game, as well as environments, and I'll get into that a bit more later. But each area has a unique feel and tone to it, and I like the genre. It's good. A mixture of magic and technology. You're not gonna do wrong by me as long as the story's right, of course. It's a good genre, I'm interested in it basically. And the overall plot on paper for the most part is really good. Chapters 1 to 17 really hooked me in, and each time I streamed the game, I was planning to play for 4 hours? And then I ended up always streaming for longer than I planned for. It always ended up like 6 hours or something, just because I was so engrossed in the game. It was awesome. But chapter 18 is the one I'm going to criticize, the ending. So chapters 1 to 17, brilliant. But when you look at the overall plot on paper, it seems like someone wrote chapters 1 to 17 and then someone else came in and wrote chapter 18. And it just seems to jump ahead a lot. It escalates really quickly, and there's a lot the game doesn't explain about it, as it presented some new things that you could sort of put together parts of it, but not all of it. I really enjoyed the pacing of this game. I did play all of the side quests as I went, and it kept a good balance of action and meaningful moments for character growth, and even the find the cats or find the kids ones were actually not too hard, and they'll balance out with a bunch of other side quests that you could do by fighting enemies and stuff, and find the objectives of those other find the animals side quests along the way, which is good. Everything seemed to build brilliantly for the pacing into the end game in chapter 17. And of course, if you've watched anything in the demo or the trailer, Shimra, the big bad guy, it seems like the end game was in chapter 17. All the bits and pieces throughout the game built brilliantly into the end game in chapter 17. Chapter 18, though, was another story as far as building brilliantly into it, because again, it seemed like it just escalated really quickly and the game didn't really explain enough about everything that's going on inside of itself. Now, I know that they've broken up the Final Fantasy VII Remake into multiple games compared to the original one game, but this still should stand on its own, with the last chapter of this game explaining what it's actually meant to be properly. I think the ideas presented in this game are brilliant. The way that it's grounded within its own lore for the most part is great, as well as the ongoing mystery in the story, including a key character which we see a flash of in the demo, which they never really explain who he is in the game, which is one of my other criticisms of it, but that's a spoiler thing. as well as other entities which had me wondering what exactly was going on to happen for the ending. Definitely did not predict the ending with chapter 18, but they were building up some flash forwards or flashbacks or flash crosses or whatever, the visions that the main character, Cloud Strife, was seeing throughout the game that were hinting at things to happen. They didn't really seem to be explained much later on, apart from extrapolating some sort of context for it. And I could be wrong about my theory about that, but spoilers. Some of the highlights were ideas that seemed to come out of nowhere, like a certain boss in part of the game you wouldn't think would be a boss, and people have probably heard about Cloud's infamous scene in this game. Now the boss was like, I wouldn't even think that would be a boss, but it is, and I think it works really well, and it definitely fits with the theme of that section of the game. And oh man, I love the interactions between the characters in this game, and especially Cloud and Aerith I just wanted to highlight, but also Tifa, Barrett, all of the other characters, the main crew, and Jesse, of course, don't forget Jesse, Biggs, Wedge. I think they all have their part to play in the group dynamics, and they all interact really naturally. And oh man, I highlighted Cloud and Aerith first just because I love them together. I guess I'm gonna have to say I'm more of a Cloud and Aerith shipper than a Cloud and Tifa shipper, but who knows. I don't know the story of the original game because I haven't played it. I haven't looked it up because I didn't want to spoil myself. The dialogue is fun, has a great sense of humour to it. I've really enjoyed it throughout the game. Some parts are cheesy, but to be honest, I love cheesy. It's part of the fun and it's entertaining. And it's not overly cheesy where you just cringe at it. I think it's really cool. And on that point, I think the voice acting is actually really on point, because all the characters are full of personality and emotion that is displayed brilliantly through the voice acting. Sometimes the characters will moan at weird moments though, but that's not really fault of the voice actors as much as just game decision. Yeah, that's sound design. So the rest of the sound design in this game is great as well. My main highlight would be the soundtrack, which I love listening to throughout the game. It's brilliant. I'm definitely buying it when it comes out. On top of the soundtrack, the rest of the environmental sounds were good, and I felt properly immersed in the world. Everything sounded like it should be there, and I didn't notice anything sounding out of place or any glitches, which is a good thing, because it really immersed me into the world of Midgar. If you don't know and you're watching this without knowing the Final Fantasy VII, Midgar is the country that we're in, or at least part of the country. The gameplay though is a brilliant mix of turn-based and what I would call active involvement. I don't know what the official term for it is, but where you have to press the buttons and dodge and attack as well. And so you have a mix between the two. It's so fun to play. I loved it from the demo, and from what I've played of the first Kingdom Hearts is what Kingdom Hearts aims to be, and other people have said this, but it is implemented better than Kingdom Hearts has done before. So they really nailed the gameplay, and I love it. It really feels intuitive, and it isn't really hard to get the hang of. But the trick is getting the strategy, which is actually really cool. Because the next part I'm going to talk about is the difficulty, because the difficulty was playing it on normal was a great balance, especially for a first playthrough of the game. For everything providing a good challenge, but the parts at the start weren't too hard, and then the end game was a good challenge, and the extra challenges is you have to be on your toes and make sure you implement the good strategies against all of the groups of enemies later in the game, which is really cool because you're using everything you learnt, as well as not being too difficult and overwhelming me. Because of course I died sometimes, you do that, but I think it's a great balance of not dying too much, and it's always been skill based in what I was playing with it, and so having it skill based, using a strategy was actually a really good challenge, and it was a perfect difficulty for the first playthrough, at least I think. Now I haven't played it on hard yet, and I don't plan on recording videos on hard or doing streams on hard, just because I've got other games I can stream and get onto. But I'll see how it is then. For now, I've played it on normal difficulty and it seemed a great balance for difficulty. Some of the mini games were a challenge, but it was so satisfying to be able to accomplish the feats, and those are optional, so if you're not as good at the game, you don't have to play it. I think the only one I didn't do was the certain combat simulator, a lot of challenges. The level design I think is great in the game. I never felt lost trying to find my way around, and there is a map, which is good. While the environments are filled with life, where appropriate of course, and character. Each area is unique, different, and catches my imagination. There are some optional areas to get extra items and materia as well, which are fun to figure out how to get to them. And it always feels good to go, ooh, I figured that out. I could go and get the extra reward for it. And the visuals for this game are phenomenal. I really love the detail they put into it. The character models are pleasing to the eye all throughout and nothing looked out of place. I didn't notice any graphical glitches. And there's a high level of detail down to sweat on someone's skin, which I love seeing the little details like that. And even effects in the opening scene with the magic gathering around Aerith is brilliant. And you see it in the demo and the trailer, so it's not really a spoiler, I didn't think to mention that. The sense of scale and the cinematic shots are also great. I love that. The only thing about that is like, I wanted to take a screenshot of some parts, but the cutscene plays and I was just watching the cutscene, and then when I tried to recreate it a little bit afterwards, you could almost create it but not quite. But the graphics between the cutscenes and the gameplay is the same and it's brilliant. Lighting is good, as I didn't notice any lighting that lacked motivation. And the only thing I'd say is that I don't know why there was lens flare from the sun in one of the ending cutscenes. Maybe they just thought it looked good. Composition of the shots in the cutscenes were good. It felt organic. A bit of a pity that the camera, when playing, doesn't allow you to quite recreate all the shots, but that is what it is. There's also a good use of colour in the game. Each area, as unique and different as they are with the environment, level design and that, also brings the unique colours to it. And especially how the lighting changes for the colours affecting the characters throughout. The main thing about characters and how the light interacts with them is great. I've really enjoyed it. Thinking of the environment though, the light throughout the environment was great. Nothing was too dark to see and the light was always meaningful. Thinking about the customizability of this game, there is a fair bit of customization for the weapons. You get different weapons that have different stats, as well as bracelets and armbands, and some other accessories that don't change physical appearance but do affect stats, and some have special abilities to them. Which I think did quite a good job of that. The only thing I think is that you don't see the different bracelets that the characters wear on them as a graphical thing. Doesn't matter too much. And I mean, each sword, each weapon seems to be better the more you get on with it. Of course, each has their unique thing, and you can upgrade the weapons as well how you want, or automatically let them upgrade, which is a good option to have. What I would have liked to see a bit more customization for though was the outfits. Even if it's just cosmetic, as you can change the weapons and not what outfit they have on. And now that's probably intentional because of course the characters would have those weapons. The characters would have those outfits that they like and they just keep them. Although it's like, don't you have a change of clothes? But yeah, it's optional. Didn't detract from the experience at all. And just in some of the end parts, I was noticing with the end cutscenes, sometimes the customization on the sword would be reset, so he had his original sword rather than the new sword that you have. Some of the end cutscenes. That's just a little thing I noticed. Would have been nice to have the continuity in the shots of his newer sword, but that's just a little thing. It's a nice thing to have different outfits, but it doesn't detract from the experience. And then, final section I think about is continuity. Now, I have this more for my Star Wars Expanded Universe videos, as I know a lot more about that. And as I've said, I haven't played many other Final Fantasy games outside of this. And those I did had a different storyline. The internal continuity for this game I thought was pretty good, though there doesn't seem to be any real issues, except for Chapter 18 at the end of the game. But I guess that in itself really just needed more explanation. It didn't really have any continuity errors, as it has just felt like it should have been built up to a lot more. Say it should have been in the second part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, as they split up the game. And now, the spoilers. A big thing is Chapter 18 that I really didn't like about this game. It's really weird. Now, those who are watching this, I assume, have played or watched the ending of the game. If you didn't use the assess material on Whisper, Rubrum, Viridi, and Croceo, you may have lost crucial information. Because to be honest, the assess material is optional. I saw it got some extra details and I thought that'd be good for the playthrough, and so I was using it more. But even I don't know why they're called that. Maybe explain later, but from it I gathered from the descriptions that they appear to be a future Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett that went back in time to preserve their future. I'm just like, I didn't explain that, but that's what I was gathering from the descriptions. Because Rubrum, if I'm remembering correctly, Rubrum had the sword, Viridi fought barehanded, and Croceo had not just one gun arm, but two gun arms, and fought with those. And so I was like, well, they're clear connections to the characters. Now, it could have been just something that was created for inside because they entered, but the main thing though is at the end where Sephiroth goes into whatever it is, I'll call it the alternate world, and then he goes through the portal, and Aerith suddenly knows some magic that we didn't know she had before, and she also has a lot more maturity shown just at this point where Chapter 18 starts. Of course, she didn't get a lot of time before. She's been a little bit more mature and serious rather than being more innocent and light-hearted feeling of a character after she was captured by Hojo. But there was a lot of like, how do you know how to use this magic suddenly? What? The biggest part that had me wondering what happened though was the end battle with Sephiroth and the aftermath. I thought Aerith might be able to neuter some of his powers as an ancient, because he'd shown he's way more powerful than Cloud before by ordering the Whispers around and just disappearing and creating monsters for him to fight and all that. But she knew this other spell, and I thought Aerith would go, oh, I now know how to help influence the Whispers to be able to, well, Whispers, Dementors, yeah, or Death Eaters, someone commented as we went, but hey, she helps fight. And that's about it. She sort of saves Cloud once, but not in that way. Which I thought, well, maybe, I guess they just cut off Sephiroth's more power for this end part of the game. Not also on Sephiroth. It's hinted at throughout the game, but as I haven't played the original game, I had no idea why he's so important to Cloud. So me entering this as a person that's new to the storyline, didn't know who Sephiroth was. And it was comments that was done as I streamed that helped, but the game itself didn't give me any reason to believe he would actually be the final villain. He was just some mysterious figure going, here I'm appearing to you, Cloud, become stronger, and Cloud not liking him, for whatever reason. They don't really explain it. I think there might have been a flashback at one point slightly, but still, there's not a lot to go on for who he actually is. Like, even when the comments said his connection to Cloud was more than just as a villain, that he was actually a soldier and helped train Cloud, and I'm like, whoa, they didn't explain that, did they? Anyway, you defeat him and you end up with him at the edge of the world or time or wherever it's actually meant to be. I forget exactly what they say. He disappears after some talking, and Cloud apparently has the opportunity to mess with time and space. Don't really explain how exactly that comes about, but anyway. The final cutscene plays, and apparently it somehow allows Cloud to teleport the floating city above Midgar into the past, to where a character named Zack, who has a Buster Sword, Cloud's sword from the start of the game, and I'm like, who is this person? They started giving him some flashbacks to Zack in chapter 17 a little bit, but then that's about it. Like, why did we not find out more about who Zack was in earlier flashbacks, earlier in the game? Now, apparently he's a character in Crisis Core, which is a prequel to this game, and he gave Cloud his Buster Sword. But I wouldn't know that if people in the comments weren't explaining that to me. I'm like, what? Why? And if they were going to build him up, I said in my notes especially, they should have spotted more flashbacks of him throughout the game, rather than just at the end. Like, have flashbacks of how Cloud came to be where he is. A bit more. The ending overall just left me wondering what's going on. And, I mean, there sort of wasn't really a cliffhanger either to buy the next game, because they split up the original Final Fantasy VII story for this remake, and I was going, oh, well, they beat Sephiroth, they messed with time, I don't know what's gonna be next, and they said, we're just gonna travel the rest of the world, and I'm not that interested. They just had all this massive thing that just confused me, and at the time I'm just like, what is all this? I think it would have been better if Shinra, the company, was the final villain, and then they found, as hinted earlier in the game, that Shinra was in the world at large, doing more bad things, not just in Midgar but in Outer Reaches, where they had a map at one point when we were going through the Shinra building, and they go out to stop them in the other parts of the world. And also some loose ends were like, we don't know how Don Corneo ended up properly. And I really wanted to have a proper battle against Heidegger. And I wanted to have a battle against Seng, the leader guy of the Turks. Because they were all built up as these head bosses and that, and these lieutenants basically of Shinra. And yet we completely bypassed them. Heidegger, at the end, we just beat his goons with a motorbike and then drive past him. I'm like, well, surely he could have done more than that. It all seems like a lot of build up for Shinra being the big bad was wasted by not having them as final villains of the game. We fought other Turks, we didn't fight Seng, and we were fighting to blow up the Mako reactors and everything, which Heidegger was protecting or doing his plan bit while looking after them, looking at the security cameras and whatever. And then it goes, well, they weren't the big bag, Sephiroth was. Here's chapter 18. I was like, what? This Sephiroth guy isn't explained properly who he is still in the game. There's also the bunch of flashbacks or flash forwards or flash acrosses, still don't know, throughout the game that aren't explained in this one. I mean, I understand possibly having some of them go, okay, some of these are what might happen in the next game or the next part to the Final Fantasy VII Remake. But there's some that I would have liked to go, well, they should have given meaning to some of them within the game itself, because this, of course, being a separate game, should stand by itself as a story. And so I was going, you give us all these. They only quickly flashed those as well back again in chapter 18, and I had no idea what it still meant. Oh, and they showed this cat creature during when the Sector 7 plate fell, and I had no idea what that actually was and how it connects in. Why would they show something in this game that's meaningful, like this cat creature being there, and then not have it appear later so we know what it actually is? Now, I do understand that, yes, they're going to have the next part of the game, but it's still like, take the game by itself. does it tell a cohesive story, and it just left too many loose ends, I think. And yeah, possible multiverses thing, but there's no real explanation, and possibly will rely on the next part of the remake. And I don't think that all of it should rely on the next part of the remake to be explained. I think, yeah, like I said, some of them, like Cowboy Tifa visions, could be in the next part of the game. But some of the stuff where it has... me thinking specifically about this vision of the materia dropping onto the ground somewhere. Why was that not given some sort of significance within the game? They could have done that, I think. Anyway. In the end, summary. Chapters 1 to 17, brilliant. Really love them. I don't really give ratings, so I haven't worked out a formal thing for that. But I really loved and enjoyed chapters 1 to 17, and I think it definitely got my money's worth out of those chapters. But chapter 18 was just a confused mess, I would call it, where it escalated everything really quickly, didn't explain things that were in it, and then left me going, wait, what? What happened? I don't get it. Anyway. That is my thoughts on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to this. Give me your thoughts as well, because I'm actually interested to hear what other people think about this. And I will see you in the next video. Over.